Hey everybody, Bitfocus Companion version 4 is now out, and so I wanted to kind of take you guys through some of the things that have changed, but also I need to do an update what's happened with Companion since the last time I did a video here on this channel about it several years ago, because a lot has changed in that time, and I just want to bring you all up to date and to let you know whether I actually recommend using it at this point, because the last time I did a video, it was not great, and so I kind of advise people to steer clear. But again, a lot has changed. So let's actually take a little bit of time to go over what is new, and we'll talk about its reliability. So here we go. All right, so I just had Bitfocus Companion version 4.0 ship here a few days ago, and most of the changes that were made, and which has kind of caused it to go from 3.x to 4.0, have to do with the architecture, but they did add one feature that I have been wanting for a very long time, and I'm so glad to see it, and I'll show you guys what that is. But for anybody who's not familiar with Companion, it is a piece of software that's designed to run Windows, Mac, Linux, Raspberry Pi to control all sorts of different video and audio equipment. They originally designed it to work with Stream Deck devices like this one, but they have added a lot of support for a lot of other devices over the last several years since it first came out, including things from X-Keys, which you guys can kind of see here, one that I'm using here, as well as MIDI controllers and a whole bunch of other stuff. It can interface with a very wide variety of equipment, some of it very obscure, and allows you to basically create lists of actions to perform when you press a button or in response to something that happens on one of your pieces of video equipment. For example, you start recording on a hyperdeck, you could have a second hyperdeck start recording automatically based on that event. And there's just a million things that you can do, and it's designed to be very, very flexible. It's gotten a heck of a lot better since it first came out, and going from version 2 point whatever it was when I last did a video here on the channel to version 3 and now version 4, it is a much better product, much more mature than it was back in the day. And I admittedly should have done a video somewhere in the interim time updating everybody on its status, because it is by far a better product now than it was when I did my last video. So anyway, without too much further ado, let's actually just kind of dive in and show some of the things that have actually changed. If you have used Companion in the past, you'll notice that the user interface on this one is it's familiar, but there are some significant changes. So in version 3 point whatever and some of the earlier versions, your different tab pages that you would use to configure it were across the top of the page, and those have now moved to the left side of the page. So we'll kind of start here with the connections page. So before it was connections and then buttons and so forth. So that's all moved over to the left. And I think that's actually a very welcome change. It does declutter the user interface a little bit. But being here on the connections page, this actually leads us to the first huge change that was made with version 4.0. With all the 3.x and 2 and 1, all those previous versions, all of the different modules that you wanted to use to communicate with different pieces of equipment were included with the downloaded version of the software built right in. That made it easy to set up, but the downside to that is if you needed to update one of those modules, you had to update the entire package, the entire product. And so they got kind of on a schedule where they do releases periodically in order to make sure that everything was getting updated. With version 4.0, that is no longer the case. So each of the different modules that's designed to communicate with different pieces of audio and video software and hardware are updated and actually distributed separately. So what that means for anybody who uses the software is you get updates more frequently to some of these modules. So if there's a bug fix on one, you'll be able to download that without any real issue. But it also means that if you find that there's a version that you really like, you don't have to update it when new versions come out. And as you configure each one of the different modules, you can basically tell it what you want to do with new versions, whether you want to update to new stable versions or you want to go to beta versions, or if you want to stay on a particular version and not update. So you have that control now, which you didn't have before. The one big downside to this is that once you install the software, it doesn't have any modules in it whatsoever. And so as you go to add things, it takes a little longer because they have to be downloaded off the internet. They're not actually stored locally. So they do have a package that you can download, which includes basically all of the offline modules that were available previously. So you can download those in one big file and install them manually so you don't have to worry about downloading them off the internet later on. But if you don't do that, as you add new modules, they will automatically be downloaded. So it's not that big of a change, especially if you're working in situations where you always have an internet connection. And so all you have to do is find the module that you want, click add, and it'll be downloaded and installed manually. So overall, I think that is a great change. It's going to allow us to have updates to modules a lot more frequently than we have had in the past. Okay, so that's the biggest update. The other big update, and this is the one that I'm probably most excited about, is now have the ability to put logic into the actions that are performed on the buttons. So let's actually just walk through and show what that's going to look like. So I'm going to go to a brand new page here. One doesn't have anything on it. And I'm going to create a new button here. And let's have this button, let's say, do two different things based on whether the downstream key on my switcher is currently active or not. So I'm going to create a new button. I'm going to move my keyboard over here so it's a little easier for me to type this. But I'm going to say, we'll just say this is test button, okay? All right, and just for make this look good, I'll choose my own font size rather than randomly choosing based on the size of the text. All right, so the new thing that we have available to us is conditional if. So if I type in if, internal logic, if statement. So hallelujah, we finally have this. This is something that a lot of us have been asking for a very, very, very long time. And I don't understand why that they took so long to do this, but they certainly have, and very grateful that it is now available. So, all right, the first thing we need to do here is, and we need to define a condition that we want to test for when we press this button. And if it's true, then we'll execute a certain set of actions. And if it's false, then we'll have the option to execute other actions in this place. The first thing we need to do is we need to define a condition. So I'm going to just type in ATEM here, and I'm going to scroll through here and see if we can find something based on the downstream key. Okay, all right, downstream key on air, and we're going to do key 1. And so it's basically going to say if downstream key 1 is currently on air, then we're going to perform this action. Otherwise, we're going to perform this other action. All right, so the action that we're going to perform in this case is we're going to actually turn that off. And so if we hit it on, it'll automatically turn back off again. This is kind of a silly demo, but I just want to demonstrate how the logic actually works. All right, so set on air, and we're going to set that to off. And otherwise, I'll perform an auto transition. Okay, that's really silly. We'd never actually do this in real life. But basically, if we press this button and the downstream key is already on air, then it's going to turn the downstream key off. Otherwise, it's going to perform an auto transition. All right, so with that defined, I'm actually going to press the test button that I've created here. So I'm going to reach over my Stream Deck and press the button on that. So I press that, and it does the auto transition because my downstream key was not actually on air. Now, if I press the button to turn the downstream key on air, you're not going to see anything because the source for that is actually currently all black. But if I press the button now with downstream key currently on air, it's going to turn it off. So, and it did. So as I pressed the button, downstream key turned off. I know you guys didn't see any evidence of that, but it actually did. And now if I press it again, you'll see it does the transition as we defined in the rule. Now, that's obviously a contrived example, but I wanted you guys to see what you can do with the ability to have logic inside of your inside of the actions that are performed as part of a button press or a trigger. You can actually have multiple steps that are executed as part of this. So you can see when this is true, you do this, and then again, you have the ability to add additional actions here below that. So certainly something that I've been wanting for a very, very long time. They've done a lot of other things to sort of rework the interface and just reorganize things a little bit. So, like for example, a place to store your own custom variables, that's been improved a fair amount here. Very welcome change there as well. And go ahead and click on the what's new thing. So again, the big thing is modules as plugins. We also X-keys button layout simplification, still not perfect, but still better. Again, the logic if statement that is very, very welcome. And then there's internal abort that's been improved a little bit, which basically you're able to add a step to the actions as part of a button or whatever to stop processing the commands that are in there. So that's certainly very welcome as well. There's a few bug fixes that have been put into place here. Nothing that affects the way I work with this, but yeah. All right, so I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I've discovered recently about Companion, which aren't necessarily new, but maybe some of the power users that watch my channel will actually find very interesting and very useful. And so I'm just going to cover them briefly. I'm not going to go into a lot of real detail on these, but there's some cool stuff that you can do and have been able to do for a little while that I think are probably worth calling attention to. So the first one here is actually the ability to do expressions. In this case, it's actually JavaScript code that's used to, in this case, build the text for a button. So I've got this button here, which is for starting a particular video clip on a connected hyperdeck. And you can see that the label on this button is 14:DJP_1. So what this means is that's clip 14, and then the file name on that clip on the hyperdeck is DJP_1. So this is the logo that you see comes and spins when I start my videos. So I have a button here on the Stream Deck that's designed to play that. Now let's take a quick look at this expression that I've actually built for the label for this particular button. This is using that JavaScript feature in order to do that, and I'm glad that Companion has this capability. So this is JavaScript code that's actually building the text that's on the button there. So I've got a variable here I call BID, which is for button ID, which more accurately should be clip ID. But I have this variable right here, which is a playback offset variable, and that's controlled by this button over here that says +10 on it. So as I press that on my controller, it's toggling on and off. And all that button is doing is changing the value for this particular variable to either 0 or 10. So when it's down, it's setting the variable to 10. So we're looking at for clip ID 10 plus 4. So in this case, clip number 14. And then I have this expression right here, which is basically saying we're gonna build a variable here combined from hyperdeck_PB:clip followed by the button ID, which in this case is 14, comma, and then _name. So this is building a variable that looks something like $, parenthesis, hyperdeck_PB:clip 14_name. So that's basically constructing a variable which will be used to retrieve the name of clip 14 that's in there. And then the very last statement in here is basically saying concatenate, in other words, merge the button ID or clip ID, space, and then the button name. So that's where the 14 space DJP_1 is coming from. So even though this is not a new feature for version 4.0, this is something that's been in 3 point whatever for a while. It does allow you a lot more flexibility in terms of what you are using to build the text for a particular button on there. So these expression capabilities are available in some of the different modules, but not all. I know that they're working on adding those to more. You can see right down here, there's the ability to do expression here as part of an internal variable. But other places it is not. So it's going to be determined based on which modules you're using, whether you can use those expressions in an action or not. So, but anyway, so the actions here that are performed by this button, first of all, it's assembling this new variable, internal custom playback offset +4. So this is how it's determining which clip number it wants to play. And then the next step here is to go to that clip number. So we're going to say we use the variable in order to determine which clip we want to go to, and then it's going to start playback on that at 100% speed, and it's going to play a single clip. So pretty cool there. And in terms of feedback, I basically just have this highlight on here, which changes the background to gray and the text to black when that clip is actually playing, or at least when it's selected. So if I was to press that button to play that clip, you would see the button change there as well. Okay. All right. So again, not new, but certainly very useful. Now, the other thing I wanted to kind of call attention to here is because they have changed the way that they do timings, you're able to do some pretty cool stuff. So with the fact that most of the Stream Deck devices have a lot fewer buttons on them than I would like, I would love to see one that has like over 100 buttons, but the biggest one they make is currently 32. So because with that limitation, that means I kind of have to double up on functionality. So either you're paging through, going from one page to another in order to get different commands, or you're doing tricky things with each button in order to change its behavior. So I've very typically set it up where based on how long I press the button, it performs different actions. So in this case, if I just do a quick press and release, it starts playback of a single clip on the hyperdeck, my playback hyperdeck. If I hold it for longer than 300 milliseconds, it starts playback, but it turns looping on. Okay, so that allows me with a single button to either play a single clip and stop, or play a single clip and loop it over and over again, just based on how long I press the button. Now, come down a little bit further. If I hold down the button for over 1,000 milliseconds, or 1 second, it actually will stop playback. So with one single button, I'm able to play on loop, or stop. And I'm finding myself doing that an awful lot all over the place, just because I need more buttons than what these devices actually have. So very cool. You can do that kind of thing, and I'm glad that they've kind of perfected that. The way that they used to do that in version 2 and some of the earlier 3.x versions was very awkward, and I think they've actually done this much more understandable, much better way overall. So anyway, but I don't want to turn this video into me just kind of demonstrating how I have things configured. I should really do another video about that if that's something you guys want to see. So if that is something you want to see, leave a comment down below, and just kind of let me know what you want to see about what I've configured with Companion. Now, with all of that said, I do want to do a follow-up based on what my previous video here on the channel, and what I said in that video about companions. At the time, I was running a I think it was like 2.5 or 2.3, some version. I don't remember exactly what it was. So it was a long time ago, and things have changed a lot. In that video, I basically said that Companion was not reliable and shouldn't be used in any sort of professional environment where you need to have high reliability. And for example, if you have a client that's paying you and you can't have anything go wrong, at the time I was basically telling people, stay away from it because it's not stable. It's not ready for that kind of environment, and it's bound to let you down. I had a couple of very high-profile situations occur because of bugs in the software, and so basically I came out and said that, hey, this thing is not good enough for professional work, therefore you should probably avoid it. At the time I said that, it was absolutely true, and I got a lot of flack for it because a lot of people say, yeah, it works well for me. And well, having it work well for one person is not a promise that it's going to work well for everyone. And one of the reasons I was seeing a lot of problems is because I was using it in a different situation than a lot of people, especially the developers who worked on it. In that particular situation, I had a situation where it was crashing all the time, and it turned out that it was because of a bug in the hyperdeck module in particular. It had been coded in such a way that if it got a status message back from the hyperdeck that said, I'm recording in 4K, it would just crash. And when it crashed, it would bring down all of Companion with it. With version 3.0, they moved that architecture to a better place where one module wouldn't necessarily bring down all of Companion. At the same time, apparently other developers came in and fixed that particular module, and so it works a lot better now than it did. I've still exercised caution with Companion for a lot of reasons. One of the big ones is that the module that they use for communicating with the Blackmagic Design ATEM switchers is something that was reverse engineered rather than using the official SDK from Blackmagic. That always makes me nervous, and there have been some issues, particularly when new versions of the ATEM software come out, or ATEM firmware come out, where that SDK that they're using starts to have some issues. And so I've always chosen to exercise a large degree of caution with that particular module. That said, I'm more comfortable with it now than I have been in the past. So I have had some situations where I'm working with clients who are maybe a little bit forgiving of potential issues, where I will incorporate that into my workflow, which is something I never would have thought of doing with any of the 2.x versions. It just was not reliable enough at the time. In the week that I've been using this, it hasn't crashed on me, but I have had a couple of situations where it stopped talking to my Stream Deck. And that's not just here in my basement studio. I also had that happen in my trailer as well. So it's not limited to just this particular set of hardware. I had a similar situation happen in my trailer once as well. It didn't crash any hardware. The software itself did not crash. It didn't do anything that would have caused a problem with a client. But at the same time, if you're reliant on it, so you're using a control surface of some kind, like a Stream Deck, to control your ATEM switcher, might hold off until version 4.0.2 or another one comes out just to see if they can figure out what that bug is and get it fixed. When it happens, I double check and make sure the device is still showing up in Device Manager, and it does. It's just when you go into Companion and you go to the Connections page, it's showing as the device is offline. Restarting Companion seems to fix it, so it seems like there's some kind of bug there. But if you're watching this video shortly after 4.0 comes out, maybe hold off for a week or two in order to give the software authors a chance to figure out what that is and get it fixed. But other than that, I am feeling a lot more comfortable with it than I have in the past. Now, in terms of whether I would recommend this product for somebody who is working for paying clients in professional situations where you have to have things absolutely work without any sort of repercussions for a mistake that's being made, I would say I'm about 90% yes on that and 10% hold off. And the reason I say that is because even with all the improvements that they've made over the last several years since my last video, I still have had to restart version 3.5 every day. It wouldn't run for more than 24 hours without locking up. It doesn't bring down any hardware when it crashes like that or locks up. It's more of a lockup than a crash. I've never had it crash any hardware that I'm talking with. But at the same time, if I needed that to be 100% reliable it's the only way I have controlling my hardware. I might get into a situation where I need to force a restart on the companion software in the middle of an event. So knock on wood, hopefully they get that fixed at some point, but it is still not what I would call 100% reliable. I know a lot of people have actually criticized me for running it on Windows and complaining about the reliability of it, but I've had the same experience whether I run it on Windows or Mac or Linux or Raspberry Pi. It's performed exactly the same in all the situations. I think I see more problems because I'm running it with a lot more different types of devices than most people do. I have over a dozen different devices that it's communicating with in my trailer, and more than a half a dozen devices here in my basement studio. So I'm using it a little more heavily than most people do, and therefore, if there are problems, I'm going to be more apt to find them than somebody who's using it just to control their ATEM switcher. So keep that in mind when you consider whether it might be something that's going to be right for you or not. Like, how complicated of a situation are you in? How much hardware are you using? How much of that hardware is a little bit obscure and maybe hasn't seen as much development and testing as some of the others? The ATEM module in here at this point is getting fairly mature and it's pretty well heavily used by a lot of different users, and so it's going to be a little bit more robust than something that, say, controls like my Symmetrix DSP, where that module does seem to have some bugs in it. So take that into consideration when you're deciding whether you want to include this in your video production workflow or not. So anyway, well, that's going to be about it for Companion. You can download it from the links that have popped up throughout the course of this video. It's absolutely free to use. If you do find it useful, though, you might consider giving a donation to the authors. I know that they appreciate that very much. The people who created Companion have also created another piece of software that's called Buttons. It is a paid product. It's designed primarily for using with the larger products. There is a Stream Deck Studio unit that's a rack mount. It has much more professional buttons on it. It's built more rugged than the Stream Deck products are. So if you're going to be using this kind of thing in a professional situation, you might consider using Buttons instead of Companion. And Buttons does use the same modules as Companion, so you're able to control the same devices, but it's in software that's a little bit more robust. So you might consider moving to that, or at least taking a look at it anyway. So that's going to about do it. So if you have any questions or comments about Companion or Buttons or anything else related to video production, you can leave those in the comment section down below this video. Or even better, join me over on my Discord server. There's a link there popping up on your screen, djp.li/discord. In order to get to that, it's absolutely free to sign up, and there is a great community of people there who are more than happy to help, very knowledgeable, very friendly. And so if you need some help with something, you can certainly find it there as well. With that, I think we're going to be about done here. So thanks everybody for watching, and have a fantastic day.